Trapped by Michael Northrop, Chapter 10. The emergency light was out when I woke up. I was lying, so that when I blinked my eyes open for the first time that morning, I was looking right at it. Was it on a timer, or was it out of batteries already? After just one night? That seemed a little unlikely. Wouldn't the batteries be made to last longer than that? Then again, how old were those batteries? I looked away from the walls and over toward the windows. It took me a few moments to process what I was seeing. Weak light was streaming in through the top of the glass, running the length of the hallway, maybe 8 feet up. At first, my groggy brain thought that must be how the hallway was built. Windows at the top, like a basement. Then I remembered that it was a glass hallway, top to bottom. What I was looking at was 8 feet of snow, but my brain didn't want to believe it. The ceiling was probably 10 feet high. So what's that? 2 feet of glass not blotted out by snow? The snow looked black, except near the top, where a little light seeped down to turn it a soft gray. Imagine that, black snow. I knew it wasn't, that it was something about the dim, uneven light in the hallway. I sat up and looked at it for a while. It was like how you can't see out the window into the darkness at night, but anyone out there can see in, if that makes any sense. Anyway, whatever. It was an optical effect. 8 feet of black snow topped by a 2-foot band of morning light, so dim that my eyes didn't even need to adjust to it. It was bizarre and kind of overwhelming. I felt like I was being buried alive. I could only see 2 things in the space above the snow. The first was the dim morning light. I've already told you about that. The second was the snow, still falling. It didn't look like it was falling as hard as yesterday, so maybe it was tapering off. I was in no mood to get my hopes up, though. I'd gone to sleep sure this would all be over when I woke up. But it had obviously been going gangbusters during the night. I looked at the gap, watched the snow come down, and tried to calculate how long it would be until it was all the way up to the top, until no light would get in. I felt my chest tighten and looked away. I sat up straighter and got my bearings. It was colder now. I exhaled in a low, steady stream, but I couldn't see my breath, so it wasn't that cold. I'd been sleeping for hours in my jacket, hat, and gloves, so parts of me were actually pretty warm. My hands were sweating. I'd never slept with gloves on before. I took them off now and felt the cool air curl into my wet palms. It felt good and distracted me from the tightness in my back and the bruised feeling in my left hip. I'd been sleeping on my side on the floor, and now I shifted my weight to figure out what hurt and what didn't. I looked around, rubbing the left side of my face to try to get some of the feeling back. The others looked like they were still sleeping. They were curled up or sprawled out on either side of me. The light was still too dim to see colors well, but I could see their shapes. Jason was on his side, drilling into his hand. Pete was wearing his ridiculous hat and had a little smile on his face, dreaming of some place other than here. Les was farther down, spread-eagled on his back, like he was making a snow angel. His chest was rising and falling, rising and falling. We were lucky. No heavy snores. I looked over to my left, where the girls were. They were curled up, facing each other like bookends. My eyes swept over Julie and fell on Krista. She was wearing her sweatshirt and jacket, but had taken off her hat and placed it under her head so that it was in between the side of her face and the cold tile floor. Her mouth was open just a little, and I could see her nostrils flare in and out as she breathed. She was curled forward with her knees pulled halfway up so that the line of her back and legs formed the shape of an S. I looked at the line of her S, and then I looked at the line of her, well, anyway, that's when I realized Elijah was watching me. He was watching me watch her. I don't know if I sensed him looking, the way they say you can feel if someone's staring at you, or if I just did the math and realized I hadn't seen him yet. He was sitting up against the far wall, where the hallway led down toward the double doors. He didn't bother to look down when I looked up at him. Why should he? He caught me looking, not the other way around. We sat there looking at each other. It wasn't a stare down exactly. At least it didn't feel like one. Elijah had this 1,000-yard stare thing. He might be looking at you. He might be looking through you. It was tough to tell. Neither of us spoke, and then he raised his right hand to his head and made a plucking motion, as if he was picking something out of his hair. He dropped his hand down on the side and made a motion as if he was letting something go. I didn't understand at first. There was nothing in his hair and nothing in his hand. Then I raised my right hand to the same spot, and sure enough, the empty Oreos wrapper was stuck to my head. I plucked it off and stuck it in my pocket. The empty foil crinkled as I crushed it down. It wasn't loud, but I guess it was enough. I heard movement behind me. Jason sat up, and that caused Pete to turn over onto his other side, still chasing that dream. I nodded to Jason, but he didn't see me yet. He was staring at the snow wall. The light coming in through the top was stronger now, and it was brighter in the hallway. The wall wasn't black anymore. It was gray against the glass. I thought back. Had it ever really been black? I turned back toward Elijah, but he was gone. I guess he had wandered down toward the doors. With the snow so deep, I could no longer see around the corner of the glass hallway. But I hadn't heard him go. My head swam for a second. I wasn't sure I trusted my eyes right now. I stood up, just to get the blood flowing, to wake up a little. My knees cracked, but it felt good to be up, closer to the light coming in. Hey, whispered Jason. Hey, I whispered, turning toward him. He looked out at the snow pressed against the glass, literally tons of it. Then he looked back at me and made the same shoot me now gesture as Pete had the night before, but he made it with both hands. Then he dropped his thumbs, shooting himself in both temples. Good morning to you too.